Good evening and welcome, wherever you are as you listen tonight, and whatever kind of day it has been to bring you here. I'm glad you came. Maybe you're already lying down, with the covers drawn up and the room gone dim. Maybe you're at the end of a long stretch of hours, or resting somewhere far from your own bed, in that quiet part of the night when almost everything else has gone still. Before we start, I'd love to know one small thing. Where in the world are you listening from tonight? If you feel like it, leave a word below to say hello and tell me where you are. There's something quietly lovely in the thought of so many people, scattered right across the world, all settling down to rest at the very same time. And if these calm recordings help you unwind and slip off to sleep, a gentle like and a quiet subscribe help this little channel more than you'd think. Now, let me tell you where we're going to wander this evening. Tonight, we are going to explore the strangest and most remarkable thing in the whole known universe. And the odd part is that you carry it around with you everywhere you go. It sits just behind your eyes and above the roof of your mouth, weighing hardly anything at all. And yet it is doing something right now that no one on earth fully understands. We are going to explore the human brain. We'll look at what it's made of and how its tiny parts whisper to one another. We'll take a slow tour of its regions and clear away a popular myth or two along the way. We'll follow how it builds the world you see, how it keeps your memories, how it feels, how it changes, and what it quietly gets up to while you sleep. And near the end, we'll sit gently with its deepest riddle, the one no one has yet solved. There is nothing here you need to follow closely. There is nothing to study, nothing to remember, and there is certainly no test at the end. If anything, I hope this feels less like a lesson and more like a long, unhurried bedtime story about the quiet machinery that makes you, you. And if you find yourself drifting off somewhere in the middle, long before we reach the last chapter, please don't feel you've missed a thing. Drifting off is exactly what this is for. It would be the loveliest possible way to spend the night. So make yourself as comfortable as you can. Sink a little deeper into the pillow. Let your shoulders come down from wherever they've been sitting all day, and let your eyes close whenever they're ready. Take one slow breath in, and let it softly out. And let us begin with the small grey world you carry inside your head. Let us start with something you can almost hold in your two hands. The human brain weighs only about 3 pounds. That is roughly the weight of a small melon, or a couple of oranges, or a bag of sugar from the kitchen shelf. If you could lift one and feel its heft, you might be surprised by how modest it is, how soft and how quiet, no bigger than a pair of cupped palms. It is the color of putty, a little pinkish grey, and its surface is folded and wrinkled all over like a walnut, or like a cloth that has been gently crumpled and never quite smoothed out again. And yet this small, soft, folded thing is, as far as we know, the single most complex object in the entire universe. That is not a poetic flourish. It is, quite honestly, where the science leaves us. We have looked out at exploding stars and swirling galaxies, at the deep machinery of atoms and the vast reaches of space, and nowhere out there have we found anything that comes close to the tangled intricacy of the 3 pounds of tissue resting inside your skull tonight. The most powerful things we have ever built are simple beside it. Somewhere in that quiet fold of tissue is every word you know, every face you love, every song you can hum, and the whole of the world as you experience it. It is a small grey universe, and you were handed one at birth. What makes it so intricate is what it is built from. Packed into that modest space are somewhere in the region of 86 billion nerve cells. Nerve cells are the working units of the brain, and we call them neurons. Now, a billion is already a number too large to really picture. If you tried to count to a billion out loud, one number every second, without ever stopping to eat or sleep, it would take you more than 30 years to get there. And the brain holds not 1 billion of these little cells, but 86 of those counts, stacked one on top of another, all folded into a space smaller than a loaf of bread. Alongside them sits a second great crowd of cells, roughly similar in number, that tend and feed and protect the neurons and keep everything running. We call these the helper cells. For a long time, people believed there were far more helpers than neurons, but careful counting in recent years has shown the two crowds to be much closer to even than anyone once thought. Here is one way to feel the size of that number. Look up on a clear night at all the stars you can see, and then imagine the countless more beyond them, all the stars wheeling through our whole home galaxy. The number of nerve cells packed into your single small head is thought to lie in that same great range as the stars of a galaxy. You carry, in other words, something like a galaxy's worth of little cells behind your eyes, each one joined to thousands of its neighbors, the whole of it lit with quiet activity, folded into a space you could cover with your two hands. When people say the brain is a universe, they are not only being poetic. In sheer numbers, it very nearly is. It is tempting, in our age, to reach for the computer as a comparison, to say the brain is a kind of machine made of flesh, and there is a grain of truth in that. Like a computer, the brain runs on signals and handles information, and could be said to do a kind of reckoning. But the comparison breaks down almost at once, and it breaks down in the brain's favor. The machines we build keep their memory in one place and their reckoning in another, and shuttle facts stiffly back and forth between them. The brain does no such thing. In the brain, the remembering and the reckoning are the very same tissue, woven together, so that where a thing is kept and how it is used cannot be pulled apart. There is no separate place where you sit reading off the results, no little screen, no operator at the controls. There is only the tissue itself, all of it working at once. And somehow, out of that whole working the mind arises. Nothing we have ever built comes close. And, if we are honest, we do not fully understand how the brain manages it. If you could look closely at a slice of brain, you would notice that it is not all one shade. There is a darker, greyish outer rind, and beneath it a paler, whiter core, and the two are doing different work. The greyish part, gathered mostly in that folded outer layer, is where the cell bodies crowd together, where the deciding and the reckoning happen. The whiter part beneath is made of all the long sending fibers, the threads that carry messages from place to place, bundled together like great cables running through the depths of the brain, wrapped in a pale, fatty coat that gives them their color. So you might picture the whole as a thin, busy, thinking rind wrapped around a deep tangle of wiring, the doing on the outside and the connecting within, all of it packed into that small folded space. There is one more thing about this small organ that is worth resting on, because it says a great deal about how important your brain is to the rest of you. For all its modest weight, the brain is astonishingly hungry. It makes up only about 1 part in 50 of your body's weight, a mere sliver of the whole of you, and yet it quietly drinks down close to 1/5 of all the energy your body uses, all day and all night, whether you are solving a hard problem or simply lying here in the dark. a fifth of everything, spent on a thing that weighs almost nothing. Even now, as you rest and your muscles go loose and your breathing slows, your brain is warm and busy and burning through its share, never truly switching off, not once in your whole life, from before you were born until the very end. It is the most expensive thing you own to keep running, and it is worth every last drop. To understand how such a small thing can do so much, we have to shrink ourselves down in our imagination and go and look at one of those 86 billion nerve cells up close. Because the wonder of the brain is not really in any single cell. Each neuron on its own is a fairly simple thing. The wonder is in how they are joined together and in the endless soft conversation they hold with one another, day and night, without ever once falling silent. Picture then a single neuron. It has a rounded central part, the body of the cell, where its life is managed, and reaching out from that body are branches, delicate and many, spreading in every direction like the bare twigs of a winter tree, or like the roots of a plant held up to the light. These branches are how the neuron listens. They are covered in tiny points where messages come in from other cells, and we call them the receiving branches. A single neuron may carry thousands of these little twigs, gathering whispers from thousands of neighbors at once. And then, leading away from the body in the other direction, there is usually one long, slender fiber, quite unlike the branches, that stretches off into the distance. This is how the neuron speaks. Down that long fiber, it sends its own message, away toward whatever cells it is trying to reach. So each neuron is, in a sense, a little listener and a little speaker joined together, many branches to hear with, and one long thread to answer down. Now, how does the message actually travel? Along that long sending fiber, the signal moves as a tiny pulse of electricity, not the fierce electricity of a wall socket, but a small and gentle flicker, a little wave of charge that races down the fiber from one end to the other. Your every thought, your every movement, the sight of these words if you were reading them, the sound of this voice, all of it is carried, at bottom, by countless tiny sparks like this one, flickering along countless tiny fibers, quicker than you can follow. It is a soft electrical weather, always crackling quietly through the dark of your skull. And these little sparks are quick. The message can race along a well-prepared fiber at a remarkable pace, fast enough that when you stub your toe, the news of it travels all the way up to your brain, and the answer comes back down again in a small fraction of a second. Part of what makes this speed possible is a clever trick of wrapping. Many of the long sending fibers are sheathed in that pale, fatty coat we spoke of, wound around them like tape around a wire, and the wrapping lets the signal leap along far faster than it ever could on a bare fiber. Where the wrapping is thick and well made, thought and reaction are swift. Where it is thin or worn, everything slows. A good part of growing up, in fact, is the slow laying down of this insulation, year upon year, which is part of why a child's reactions and judgments grow sharper and steadier as the years go by. But here is the curious and beautiful part. The neurons do not quite touch one another. Where the sending fiber of one cell reaches the receiving branches of the next, there is a tiny gap, a whispering space far too small to see, so narrow that it makes the join between the cells rather than breaking it. When the little electrical pulse comes racing down the fiber and arrives at that gap, it cannot simply leap across. Instead, something rather clever happens. The arriving pulse causes the cell to release a puff of special chemicals into the gap, tiny messenger substances that drift across the narrow space and are caught on the far side by the branches of the next cell. And when enough of them are caught, they set off a fresh electrical pulse in that next neuron, and the message carries on. So the signal travels in two languages, turn and turn about, electrical along each cell, and then chemical across each gap, electrical, then chemical, electrical, then chemical, all the way through the brain. And the chemical messengers that cross those gaps are not all one kind. There are many different sorts, and they carry different meanings. Some of them, when they land on the far side, urge the next cell to fire, a kind of go on. Others do the very opposite, quieting the next cell, hushing it, a kind of no, not now, stay still. And the mind you have, moment to moment, is a running balance of all this urging and hushing, billions of tiny go signals and stop signals, added up across the whole brain, tipping this way and that. Some of these messengers you may even have heard named, for they have a great deal to do with how you feel, with pleasure and calm and drive and mood, and much of what shifts when a person is joyful or low, or soothed toward rest, is a change in the quiet chemical weather of these crossings. These little crossing places, these whispering gaps between the cells, are called synapses, and they are where the real work of the brain is done. Each one is a tiny decision, a small yes or no or maybe, passed from cell to cell. And the number of them is where the mind reels. If 86 billion neurons sounded like a great many, consider that each one may form many thousands of these connections with its neighbors. Multiply that out, and you arrive at a number of connections in the many trillions, so vast that laid end to end the thread of it would be beyond all imagining. That endlessly branching web of connections, rather than the cells themselves, is where you live. Every memory you hold, every skill you have learned, is written not in the cells alone, but in the particular pattern of which cell is joined, to which, and how strongly, across that unthinkable web. You are, in a very real sense, a pattern of connections, humming quietly in the dark. There is a plain physical fact that helps this land. All those slender sending fibers, the long threads that carry the messages from cell to cell, are each far too fine to see. And yet there are so very many of them that if you could draw them all out and lay them end to end, the wiring of a single human brain would stretch clear around the whole of the earth many times over. All of that length, all of that thread, coiled and folded and packed into the small warm space inside your skull. It is hard to hold in the mind, and perhaps we are not meant to. It is enough to know that the quiet thing in your head is wired more richly than anything else we have ever found anywhere. Let us pull back now, away from the single cells and their whispering gaps, and look at the whole brain again, as a landscape, because that great folded organ is not one uniform lump. It has regions, like a country has regions, each leaning toward its own kind of work, all of them joined together and talking constantly. Let us take a slow and gentle tour through it, from the bottom up, from the oldest and deepest parts to the newest and outermost. There is no need to hold any of it in your memory. Just let the shape of the place drift past you. We begin at the very base, where the brain meets the top of the spine, in a stalk of tissue that runs down into the neck. This is the brainstem, and it is the keeper of everything you never have to think about. It runs the automatic business of simply staying alive. It keeps your heart beating steadily, all day and all night, without ever asking your permission. It keeps you breathing, in and out, even now as you drift towards sleep and forget all about it. It manages 100 quiet housekeeping tasks that hum along beneath your notice from your first day to your last. It is the oldest part of the brain, in a way, the part we share most closely with the simplest of animals. And it asks nothing of you. Even in the deepest sleep, when the thinking parts have gone soft and dim, this faithful stork keeps its steady watch, tending the fire, so that you go on living through the night without a single thought spared for it. Just behind and below, tucked at the back like a smaller brain of its own, sits a tightly folded knot of tissue called the cerebellum. Its name simply means the little brain, and it is the great smoother of movement. Whenever you reach for a cup without knocking it over, or walk across a room without having to think about your feet, or catch something tossed toward you, it is this quiet region, working below your awareness, that makes the motion graceful instead of clumsy. It handles balance and timing and the fine coordination of the body, turning your rough intentions into smooth and steady action. You never notice it working. You would only notice if it stopped. And here is a quiet surprise about this little region. Though it takes up only a modest corner of the brain, tucked away at the back, it holds the great majority of all your brain's nerve cells, far more, in fact, than the vast folded outer layer that does your thinking. Most of your many billions of neurons are gathered not in the grand thinking sheet at all, but here, in this tightly packed knot, working away below your notice to keep your every movement smooth and sure. It is a fine reminder that the parts of the brain we never think about are often the busiest of all. Now we come up and out to the great crowning glory of the human brain, the part that gives it that wrinkled, folded, walnut look, the outer layer, spread over everything else like a thick and crumpled blanket. We call it the cortex, and it is where the slow and wonderful work of perceiving and thinking and deciding mostly takes place. It is folded so deeply for a simple reason. There is a great deal of it, far more than would fit smoothly around the brain, and so it is crumpled and tucked to pack a large sheet into a small skull, the way you might crush a big cloth to fit it into a little box. If you could take that folded sheet and spread it out flat, it would be surprisingly wide, a good deal larger than you would guess from the size of the head that holds it. And this great outer layer is not all the same. Different broad stretches of it lean toward different kinds of work, though they all cooperate and none works alone. At the very back of the head, oddly enough, is where seeing happens. The light that falls into your eyes is turned into signals that travel all the way to the very rear of the brain. And it is there, at the back, that the seen world is put together. Along the sides, near the ears, lie the regions that lean toward hearing, and close by them sit regions bound up with memory. Across the top, in a band running over the crown of the head from ear to ear, is where touch is felt, the warmth of a blanket, the weight of a hand, the texture of a sheet, each part of your body reporting into its own small patch along that band. And at the very front, behind your forehead, lies the region most tied up with planning and judging and deciding, with weighing one choice against another and holding yourself back from the foolish thing. This forward region is the last to finish growing. and it is a large part of what makes our kind of thinking so unusual among animals. Sitting deep in the middle of all this, there is a small structure that deserves a gentle mention, for almost nothing reaches the great thinking layer without passing through it first. Nearly all the news coming in from your senses, the sights and sounds and touches streaming toward the brain, is gathered at this central hub and passed onward to the right region for handling, like letters arriving at a great sorting house and being sent along to the proper doors. It sits quietly at the very heart of the brain, relaying, directing, keeping the flood of incoming signals moving to where each belongs. You will never feel it working, and yet scarcely a thing you notice tonight reaches your awareness without passing first through that small central station. And it is worth saying plainly, before we leave this tour, that none of these regions truly works alone. It is tempting, once you learn that seeing lives at the back and planning at the front, to picture the brain as a set of separate rooms, each doing its own task behind a closed door. But that is not how it is. Every region is joined to many others by great bundles of fibers, and the simplest act you can name, recognizing a face reaching for a cup, catching the point of a joke, lights up many regions at once, all working together in a single flash of cooperation. The brain is less a set of separate machines than one great orchestra, in which the seeing and the hearing and the feeling and the deciding all play together, in time, to make the seamless thing you know as a single passing moment of being alive. And then, folded away deep inside, beneath all that wrinkled outer layer, are a handful of small and ancient structures that handle some of the most powerful business of the mind. Two of them are worth knowing by name tonight, gently, in passing. Deep on each side sits a small almond-shaped cluster that has a great deal to do with feeling, and above all, with fear and alarm. When something startles you, when your heart jumps before you even know why, it is this little cluster raising the alarm, faster than thought. We will meet it again a little later. And nearby, curled like a small seahorse, lies a structure that is quietly essential to the making of new memories. Without it, the events of your day could never be laid down to keep. We will come back to that little seahorse too, before the night is through. For now, simply let the whole landscape settle in your mind. The faithful stalk at the base tending the body, the little brain smoothing every motion, the great folded blanket doing the seeing and thinking, and the small deep structures stirring the feelings and saving the memories. All of it, packed into 3 soft pounds, all of it, you. There is one more large fact about the shape of the brain, and it is one you may already half know, though a great deal of what people say about it turns out to be gently untrue. So let us walk into this one carefully, because it is a place where a pretty story has grown up over the real one, and I would like to leave you with the real one, which is more interesting anyway. The fact is this: the brain is not a single blob, but a matched pair. It comes in 2 halves, a left and a right, sitting side by side, roughly mirroring one another, each a wrinkled dome of its own. We call them the 2 hemispheres, which simply means the 2 halves of a rounded thing, and they are not sealed off from each other. Running between them, deep in the middle, is a thick bridge of connecting fibers, many millions of them bundled together, carrying a constant flood of messages back and forth from one side to the other. The 2 halves are in ceaseless conversation, so tightly woven together that in ordinary life they act as a single, seamless whole. You have never once felt like two minds sharing a skull. You feel like one, because the bridge between the halves keeps them working as one. Now, it is true, and rather interesting, that the two halves are not perfectly identical in what they do. Some kinds of work do lean a little more to one side than the other. The clearest example is language. For most people, the machinery of putting thoughts into words and understanding the words of others leans more heavily toward the left half than the right. Certain kinds of attention seem to lean a little the other way, so there is a real unevenness there, a gentle division of labor between the two sides, and scientists have mapped it with care. That part is true. We have even learned something about the two halves from a handful of rare and instructive cases, people who, long ago, had that great connecting bridge cut as a last resort to ease a serious illness. With the bridge divided, the two halves could no longer share their news as freely, and something strange and revealing came to light. The halves could be shown different things, and could each come to know something the other did not, so that in careful tests, one hand might reach for the right answer, while the person could not quite put that answer into words. The speaking half and the quieter half no longer perfectly in step. These were gentle differences, seen only under careful testing, and such people lived their lives as whole and single selves. But the cases showed, in a vivid way, that each half really is capable of its own kind of work, ordinarily bound so seamlessly to the other by that great bridge that we never feel the join at all. But here is where the pretty story took a wrong turn, and it is worth setting straight, kindly, and plainly. Somewhere along the way, this modest fact about language leaning one way grew into a much grander and much more appealing idea, the notion that people themselves come in two types, that some of us are left-brained, and therefore logical, orderly, good with numbers and reason, while others are right-brained, and therefore creative, artistic, dreamy and free. You have surely heard people describe themselves this way. It is a tidy idea and a flattering one, and it has been repeated so often that it feels like common knowledge. But when researchers went looking for it, actually looking, scanning the brains of many hundreds of people to see whether some folk truly run more on one side and some more on the other, they did not find it. There was no evidence that any of us are left-brained people or right-brained people in that way. Everyone, it turns out, uses both halves, richly and constantly, all the time. A person good with numbers is not running chiefly on the left. A person good with painting is not running chiefly on the right. We all use the whole of our brains, both halves together, joined by that great busy bridge for very nearly everything we do. So if you have ever been told, or told yourself, that you are one type or the other, that you are just not a right brain sort, or not a left brain sort, you can gently set that thought down tonight and leave it behind. It was never true. It does not limit you, because it was never real. The truth is warmer and more generous than the myth. Your whole brain is yours, both halves of it, working together in you for whatever you turn your hand to. The neat little labels were only ever a story, and not a very good one, and you may let them go. Let us turn now to something that feels so obvious it hardly seems worth a question, and yet turns out to be one of the strangest truths about the brain there is. It is the simple matter of how the world gets in, how the sight of a room, the sound of a voice, the feel of a blanket, come to be inside your head at all. Because the honest answer overturns the way most of us quietly assume it works, We tend to imagine that seeing is a bit like a window or a camera, that the eyes are clear openings through which the world simply pours in, exactly as it is, and paints itself faithfully upon the mind, so that what you see is just what is there. It feels that way. It feels effortless and immediate and true, as if you were looking straight out at reality with nothing in between. But that is not what is happening, not really. What is actually happening is far stranger and, when you stop to think about it, far more wonderful. Your eyes do not send a finished picture to your brain. They send a torrent of raw, patchy, upside down, incomplete signals, little flickers of light and dark and color, full of gaps and blurs, streaming back to that region at the very rear of the head. And out of that messy flood, your brain builds a smooth, steady, full color world you seem to simply see. It is not receiving the world so much as constructing it, moment by moment, faster than you can blink, stitching the fragments into something whole. The vivid, seamless scene in front of you right now is not arriving from outside. It is being painted from the inside, in real time, by you, and offered up to you so quickly and so convincingly that you never once catch it happening. And your brain does not do this painting blindly. It is always guessing ahead, always predicting what ought to be there, filling in the gaps with its best expectation of the world. This is why you do not notice the blind spot that sits in each of your eyes, a real hole in your vision, where the seeing nerve leaves the eye. Your brain quietly paints over it with whatever it expects should be there, so smoothly that you have gone your whole life without seeing the gap. It is why you can read a word with a letter missing and never notice the letter was gone. It is why a room does not lurch and blur every time your eyes flick about, though the raw signal certainly does. Your brain is forever smoothing, guessing, correcting, and predicting, presenting you with a tidy, finished world and quietly hiding all its work. And it is not only seeing that works this way. Every one of your senses is built up like this, from raw signals into rich experience. The sounds you hear are, out in the world, only shivers passing through the air, faint waves of pressure spreading out from a struck bell or a spoken word. There is no sound in them as you know it, no music, no voice. It is your brain, catching those shivers at the ear and turning them into the heard world, that makes them into sound at all. The smell of warm bread, the scent of rain on dry ground, are only certain small drifting bits of matter reaching the nose. And it is your brain that turns them into the wordless thing you call a smell. Even the colors of the world are, in truth, made within you. Out there is only light of different lengths, no color in it at all, until your brain takes it up and paints it, so that the red of an evening sky and the green of a summer leaf are, in a real sense, happening inside your head. The whole world you live in all its color and sound and scent, is something your brain composes from the plain and colorless signals streaming in. It is your own quiet masterpiece, made freshly every waking moment, and handed to you as though it was simply, obviously, just the world. There is a reason the brain works this way, always guessing ahead, rather than simply waiting to be told. Guessing is faster, and it is cheaper. The signals coming in from the world take a small but real time to arrive and be sorted. And if the brain did nothing but react to them, you would always be living a fraction behind, forever catching up to a world that had already moved on. So instead, the brain runs a little ahead of itself, constantly predicting what is about to happen next and readying itself for it, checking its guesses against what actually arrives and correcting only where it got them wrong. It is why a skilled player can meet a fast-moving ball that, by rights, is traveling too quickly to react to. They are not reacting to where it is. They are meeting where their brain has guessed it will be. In a quiet way, you are always living a heartbeat in the future, in a world your brain has sketched in advance and is forever gently redrawing. The loveliest proof of this is the humble optical illusion. You have surely seen the kind of picture where two lines are truly the same length, yet one looks plainly longer, and no matter how you stare, no matter how well you know the truth, you simply cannot make them look equal. Or the still image that seems to ripple and spin though nothing on the page is moving at all. Those little tricks are not flaws in your eyes. They are your brain being caught in the act. They work precisely because your brain is not passively recording what is there, but actively guessing what ought to be there, leaning on rules that usually serve it well. Fool those good rules with a clever picture, and the guess comes out wrong, and you get to feel, for a moment, the machinery working. Which means the world you live in, the whole rich seen and heard and felt world, is in a real sense a gift your brain is making you, endlessly, a best and beautiful guess about what is out there, painted freshly for you every waking moment, and most of the time it is so very good a guess that you never think to doubt it at all. If the brain is forever building the present, it is also quietly and constantly keeping the past. And the keeping of memories is one of the most precious things it does, for without it, you would have no yesterday, no childhood, no face you recognize, no thread running through your days to make them yours. Let us spend a gentle while with how the brain holds on to what has happened. The first thing to know is that memory is not one single thing, but at least two, working at different lengths. There is a short and fleeting kind, which holds only what you need for the passing moment. When someone tells you a phone number, and you keep it in your head just long enough to write it down, and then it is gone, that is the fleeting kind at work. It is a small and temporary holding, a handful of things kept close for a minute or two, and then let go, making room for the next. Most of what passes through it is meant to be forgotten, and that is no failure at all. It would be unbearable to keep every fleeting thing. And then there is the lasting kind, the deep and durable memory, where the things that matter are laid down to keep for years, for a lifetime. The memories you can call up long after, your childhood home, a wedding, the words of a song you have not heard in decades. Some things pass from the fleeting store into the lasting one and take up long residence, and some do not and slip away. And that lasting store is itself of more than one kind, which is worth a moment, for it explains something you have surely felt. There is the memory of facts and happenings, the things you could tell someone about, the name of a city, what you had for breakfast, the day you moved house. This is the memory you reach for when you try to recall, and it is the kind that can fade and blur and slip your grasp. But there is another kind entirely, the memory of how to do things, and it lives more in the hands and the body than in words. Once you have learned to ride a bicycle, or to swim, or to tie a knot, you do not forget it, even across long years of never doing it, and you could not put into words how you do it if you tried. Your hands simply know. That kind of memory is laid down differently, held in other parts of the brain, quiet and deep and durable, which is why a person who has lost the power to form new spoken memories can still, remarkably, learn a new skill with their hands, and grow better at it day by day, without ever recalling having practiced at all. You may also have noticed that some memories fix themselves far more deeply than others, with no effort on your part. The ordinary grey afternoons of a life slide away almost entirely, while a handful of moments, the frightening ones, the joyful ones, the ones that truly mattered, stay sharp and near for decades. This is no accident. When something stirs your feelings strongly, that same deep alarm and feeling cluster we spoke of reaches over and, in effect, tells the memory makers that this one is important. Mark it well. And so strong emotion acts like an underline drawn beneath a memory, fixing it more firmly than the plain events around it. It is why you can likely recall just where you were at the great moments of your life, glad or terrible, while the 1,000 ordinary days between them have blurred softly together into almost nothing. That passing over, from the fleeting to the lasting, is where our little seahorse comes back into the story. The small curved structure folded deep inside the brain that we met on our tour. It turns out to be quietly essential to the laying down of new lasting memories. It is not so much the warehouse where old memories are stored, for those seem to be kept spread out across the wider brain. It is more like the one who files them, the maker of new records, taking the events of your day and helping to fix them into lasting form. We know how vital it is because of the hard and instructive cases of people who have lost it or had it badly damaged. Such a person may keep every memory they already had, their whole past intact, and yet become entirely unable to form any new lasting memory at all, living forever in a present that never sets, meeting the same person as a stranger every single time, unable to hold on to a single new day. From such cases we have learned, at great human cost, just how much depends on that small curled structure quietly filing your life away, night after night, so that tomorrow you will still know today happened. Now here is the part about memory that most surprises people, and it is worth holding gently because it changes how you might think about your own remembering. We tend to imagine memory as a kind of recording, like a film stored away in a drawer, so that to remember is simply to take out the reel and watch it again, exactly as it was. But that is not how it seems to work. Memory is not a recording. It is far more like a rebuilding. Each time you call a memory to mind, you do not replay it so much as reconstruct it, piecing it together again from scattered fragments, filling the gaps, much as your seeing brain fills the gaps in a scene. And because you rebuild it each time, the memory can quietly shift a little with each remembering, softening here, sharpening there, borrowing a detail that was never truly part of it, dropping a detail that was. This does not mean your memories are false, or that you cannot trust them. Most of the time they serve you faithfully and well. But it does mean they are living things, gently reshaped by each recall, more like a story retold than a photograph filed away. There is something rather tender in that if you let it settle. The past you carry is not a locked vault of perfect records. It is something you make anew, softly, every time you reach for it, which is perhaps why the memories we return to most often are the ones that change the most. And a last gentle word about forgetting, which we so often treat as an enemy, as pure loss. A great deal of forgetting is not failure, but mercy, and even a kind of design. If you genuinely remembered everything, every face in every crowd, every word ever spoken to you, Every grey and ordinary hour, the sheer weight of it would bury the useful memories beneath a mountain of the trivial. Letting the endless small stuff go is part of how the brain keeps what matters findable, clearing away the clutter so the important things are not lost within it. So if you cannot recall what you had for lunch a week ago last Tuesday, do not take it as a fault in the works. It is the works running exactly as they should, releasing the small things so that the things that matter have room to stay. We have spoken of thinking and seeing and remembering, and it would be easy to leave with the impression that the brain is a cool and calculating thing, a kind of quiet machine humming away behind the eyes. But that would miss something enormous, because so much of what the brain does, perhaps most of what matters to us, is not cool at all. It is warm. It is feeling. The brain is where your emotions live, the fear and the joy and the sorrow and the love and the sudden lift of delight. And no tour of it would be honest without spending a little time in that warmer country. Let us go back to that small almond-shaped cluster deep inside, the one bound up with alarm that we met on our earlier tour. When something frightening happens, or even seems about to, this little cluster acts astonishingly fast, faster than your thinking mind can catch up. Picture a walk on a path, and a curved shape in the grass ahead, and how you jump back before you have consciously decided anything at all, before you even know whether it is a snake or only a bent stick. That jump, that jolt of fear that moves you before thought, is this deep alarm cluster at work, throwing the body into readiness in a fraction of a second, sending the heart racing and the muscles tensing, all before the slower, wiser, thinking parts have had time to look properly and say, gently, "It is only a stick. You can breathe now." Fear is fast because for our distant ancestors it needed to be. The ones who jumped first and thought second were the ones who lived to have children. And so we have all inherited that quick and ancient alarm. It would be easy to think of feelings as a nuisance, as the wild part of us that gets in the way of clear thinking, something to be overruled by cool reason. But that picture is mistaken, and the brain shows us why. Far from being reason's enemy, feeling turns out to be reason's quiet partner. We have learned this, in part, from people whose feeling machinery was damaged while their clever, calculating powers stayed perfectly intact. You might expect such a person to become a flawless, coldly logical thinker. Instead, they often become almost unable to decide anything at all, agonizing endlessly over the smallest choice, because without the soft nudge of feeling, without that gut sense of this seems right and that seems wrong, there is nothing to tip the balance between options that plain reason finds equal. Your feelings, it turns out, are not the opposite of good judgment. They are part of how good judgment works, a fast and ancient wisdom whispering beneath your reasoning, helping you choose. And beyond the sharp passing feelings, the sudden fear or the flash of joy, there is a slower and broader kind of feeling too, the one we call mood, which colors everything for hours or days at a stretch, like a weather that settles over the whole landscape of the mind. When your mood is bright, the very same day looks manageable and even kind. When it is low, that same day looks grey and heavy, though nothing outside has changed at all. Mood rises from the brain and body together, from the deep chemical weather of those messenger crossings, from how well you have slept and eaten and moved, from the long habits of your thinking. It is not simply chosen, and a low mood is not a failing or a weakness of character. It is weather, and like weather it shifts and passes, And one of the gentlest things you can do for a troubled mind is simply to give it time and rest and the plain kindnesses of a well-tended body, and let the weather turn, as in the end it always does. There is one more thing the feeling brain does that is easy to overlook, and it may be among the most human things about us. It reads the feelings of others. When you watch a face across a room, you do not coldly work out what the person must feel from the shape of the mouth and the set of the brow. You feel it, quickly and directly, a faint echo of their state stirring in you, so that we wince a little at another's pain and warm at another's joy, almost as if it were our own. Some of the very machinery that makes your own feelings seems to light up, softly, when you witness a feeling in someone else, letting you sense from the inside what another person is going through. It is the quiet root of kindness, this borrowed feeling, the reason we can be moved by a stranger and comforted by a friend. Your brain is not a lonely island of one mind. It is built from the deep places up to reach toward the means around it. But here is something important about feeling, and it is easy to miss. Emotion is not something the brain does all on its own, sealed up in the skull. Emotion is a conversation between the brain and the whole of the body. When you feel afraid, your heart pounds, your breath quickens, your stomach tightens, your palms grow damp. When you feel calm and safe, your heart slows, your breathing deepens, your muscles loosen, much as they may be loosening now. And those bodily changes are not merely the results of the feeling. They are part of the feeling itself. The brain is always listening to the body, reading the heartbeat and the breath and the tightness or ease of the gut, and weaving those signals together with what is happening in the world to produce the whole rich experience we call an emotion. This is why a slow, deep breath can genuinely calm a frightened mind, why softening the body softens the feeling. The brain feels the quiet body and reads it, quite rightly, as a sign that all is well. Your feelings are not just in your head. They rise up out of the head and the heart and the breath and the belly, all together, the whole of you feeling as one. And that is worth remembering on a night like this, because it means that as your body settles here in the dark, and your breathing slows, and your muscles let go, you are not only resting the body, you are gently telling the brain, in the oldest language there is, that it is safe now, and that it can let the day go and rest. Here is one of the most hopeful things we have learned about the brain in the last 100 years. And for a long time, we believed the opposite. It was once thought that the brain was fixed early on, that you grew the brain you were going to have in childhood, and that from then on it was set, unchanging, slowly wearing down over the years like a tool that can only dull, never sharpen. We now know that this was quite wrong, and the truth is far kinder. The brain is not fixed. It is forever remaking itself, quietly, physically, in response to everything you do, all the way through your life. The word for this is a long one, but the idea beneath it is simple and warm. So let us take the idea and leave the long word aside. The idea is this, that the brain physically changes its own wiring as you live and learn. Remember those trillions of connections between the cells, the whispering gaps where the messengers cross. Those connections are not carved in stone. They strengthen with use and weaken with neglect, and new ones form and old ones fade, day after day, in response to what you actually do. Every time you learn something, truly learn it, some small pattern of connections in your brain grows a little stronger and a little more established. The brain of a person who has practiced the violin for years is physically, measurably different in certain regions from the brain of someone who has not. The brain of someone who has learned to find their way around a great city, holding all its winding streets in mind, grows stronger in the very region that helps with such maps. You shape your brain by how you use it, the way a path is worn across a field by walking, deepening a little with each passing. Think of it, if you like, as a landscape of countless faint trails. When you do something for the first time, you are pushing through untrodden grass, and it is slow and effortful and awkward, the way anything new always is. But do it again and again, and a trail begins to form. The grass lies down, the way grows clearer and easier, until at last it is a smooth path you can follow without thinking, a thing your fingers or your feet or your tongue simply know. That smoothing of the path, from effortful to easy, is your brain rewiring itself around the practice, laying down the pattern more firmly each time, until the skill lives in you. This is what learning is underneath. It is not filling a fixed vessel. It is reshaping a living thing. This same power to rewire is also what makes healing possible after the brain is hurt. When a part of the brain is damaged by injury or by illness, the work it did is not always lost forever. Often, slowly, and with patient effort, other parts of the brain can take up some of the lost task, rerouting around the damage, learning to do what the injured region once did. It is not quick, and it is not always complete, and it can take long months of steady practice. But people who have lost the power of speech, or the use of a hand, can sometimes win a great deal of it back, not because the damaged tissue itself heals, but because the living brain around it slowly reshapes itself to carry the load. That is the very same quiet power that lets a child learn to read, only turn now to the work of mending. And here is a small, practical kindness hidden in all this, one worth knowing as you lie here tonight. The reshaping does not happen only while you practice. A great deal of it happens afterward, in the quiet hours, and above all, while you rest and sleep. When you work at something new and then step away, the brain goes on settling the new pattern into place behind the scenes, so that people often find they have grown better at a thing not during the hard practice, but after a night's sleep, as though the skill had quietly deepened on its own in the dark. Which means the rest you are drifting toward now is not idle at all. It is part of how you learn, part of how the day's efforts are folded in and made to last. Even your sleep is busy shaping you. And the deeply reassuring part is that this reshaping never entirely stops. It is swiftest and most dramatic in childhood, when the young brain is wildly, gloriously open to being shaped by the world. But it does not shut off when you grow up. Well into old age, the brain keeps this power to change, to learn a new language, to master a new instrument, to find fresh ways around an injury, to form new habits and let old ones fade. It grows a little slower with the years, it is true, and takes a little more patience and repetition. But the door never closes. Whatever your age as you lie here tonight, your brain is still, at this very moment, a thing capable of being changed by what you choose to give it. It is not finished. It is never quite finished. And there is a great gentleness in knowing that, whatever has come before, the living tissue behind your eyes remains to the very end, willing to be shaped by tomorrow. And now we come fittingly to sleep, to the very thing that may be softly gathering around you as you listen. Because one of the loveliest discoveries about the brain is that when you sleep, it does not switch off, far from it. You lie down, you close your eyes, the world falls away, and to anyone watching you seem to have gone still and idle. But inside your quiet head, through the whole of the night, the brain is busy, doing some of its most important work of all, work it can only do while you are gone from the room, so to speak, work that keeps you well. Think of how much of your life you give to it. If you live a long life, you will spend something close to a third of the whole of it asleep, years upon years, laid down in the dark with your eyes closed and the world gone. For a long time this seemed almost an embarrassment, a great waste of our short lives, and people wondered why nature would ever allow a creature to spend so much of its span so helpless and unaware. But the answer, as we have slowly learned, is that sleep is not wasted time at all. It is time the brain cannot do without, given over to work so important that no creature has ever found a way to skip it. Nearly everything with a brain worth the name sleeps in one form or another. The night is not a gap in your life. It is one of the pillars holding it up. You do not slip into one single flat state and stay there until morning. Instead, all through the night, your brain moves in slow cycles, sinking down into deep and heavy sleep and then rising again toward a lighter, dreaming kind, and down and up again over and over, in a gentle rhythm that repeats several times before dawn. In the deepest, heaviest part, great slow waves roll through the whole brain, unhurried and even, the calmest state your mind ever knows. And in the lighter, dreaming part, the brain grows almost as active as it is in waking life, spinning its strange nightly stories, while the body stays soft and still. These two kinds of sleep do different work for you, and you need both, cycling one into the other all night long. One of the great tasks the sleeping brain sets about is the tending of your memories. Through the day you gather countless impressions, most of them fleeting, a few of them worth keeping, and it seems the brain waits until you sleep to sort carefully through the day's catch. As you rest, it appears to go back over what happened, quietly replaying the paths that were walked while you were awake, and choosing what to strengthen and fix into lasting form, and what to let gently fade. That little curled structure that files new memories works closely with the wider brain through the night to move the day's important moments into deeper keeping. This is a large part of why a good night's sleep helps you remember what you learned the day before, and why sleep robbed makes everything harder to hold. The night is when the day is written down. You lie there seeming to do nothing at all, and all the while your brain is patiently deciding what of today is worth carrying into the rest of your life. In the lighter, more active stretches of the night, the brain does one of its most curious things of all. It dreams, set loose from the plain facts of the waking world, cut off for a while from the senses and from the moving body. The brain spins its own strange worlds out of the day's leftovers and older memories, weaving them into tales that can be tender or peculiar or wild, and that we mostly forget the very moment we wake. No one fully knows why we dream, or what all that dreaming is for, and it remains one of sleep's gentler mysteries. It may be part of how the brain sorts and settles the day, trying out its memories, loosening and reweaving them. It may be, in some measure, simply what a resting brain does when it is left to run on its own for a while. Whatever its purpose, there is something rather lovely in it, that even in the deep of the night, with the world shut out and the body still, the brain never quite stops making, never stops telling itself quiet stories in the dark. And there is another kind of work the brain seems to do while you sleep, quieter still, and rather wonderful. All through the busy waking day, the hard work of all those firing cells leaves behind a kind of leftover residue, waste products of a mind at work that gather slowly in the tissue as the hours pass. And there is growing evidence that sleep is when the brain clears much of this away, washing the tissue through and carrying the waste off, a nightly cleaning that the busy waking brain has little chance to do. Scientists are still working out just how this happens and exactly when it works best, and the details are being gently argued over even now. But the broad picture is a comforting one. The tiredness that settles over you at the end of a long day is not only in your body, it is in your brain, which has been working since you woke, and which needs the night to set itself in order, to file the day away, and to clear the desk for tomorrow. So there is nothing lazy in sleep, nothing wasted. When you finally let go tonight and sink down into it, you are not stopping. You are handing your brain the quiet, unhurried hours it needs to do, the tending it cannot do while you're awake. Rest is not the absence of work. It is where some of the most important work of all gets quietly done. And now we come to the strangest part of the whole story, the part where all our knowing runs out, and we stand honestly at the edge of what anyone understands. We have spoken all night of cells and signals, of regions and connections, of the electrical flickers and the chemical whispers, and it might have begun to sound as though, given enough time, we could explain the whole of the mind this way, from the bottom up, as one explains a clock. But there is one thing this picture does not explain, not even a little, and it may be the deepest unsolved question there is. It is this: why should any of it feel like anything at all? Let me try to say what I mean, because it is a slippery thing to catch hold of. We can trace, in growing detail, how light comes into the eye and becomes a signal, and how that signal travels to the back of the brain, and how the cells there fire and pass their messages along. We can follow the whole chain of electrical and chemical events, but nowhere in that chain does it become obvious why there should be an inner experience of it, why there is something it is like to see the color of a warm evening sky, rather than the whole thing happening silently in the dark with no one home to witness it. A machine could, in principle, sort light by its color and respond to it, and we would not suppose the machine feels anything, that there is any inner glow of experience going on inside it. And yet, in you somehow, there is. There is a felt, lit up, first-person world in there, an actual experiencing of the red and the warmth and the softness. Where does that come from? How does 3 pounds of quiet tissue, doing its electrical and chemical business, give rise to the feeling of being someone, here, now, alive? That question has a name among the people who study it. They call it the hard problem. And the honest truth, the truth I want to give you plainly tonight, is that no one has solved it. Not yet. Perhaps not for a long time. It is a genuine, open, standing mystery right at the center of what we are. It is worth pausing on just how unusual this puzzle is, because it is not like the other unsolved questions in science. When we do not yet understand some distant star, or some hidden working deep inside the earth, the thing we are puzzling over is far away, out there, apart from us. But this puzzle is not out there. It is the very seat from which you do all your puzzling. It is the plain fact that there is a someone here at all, an insight to your life, a light left on behind your eyes. Every other thing you could ever wonder about, you wonder about from within this one strange fact, and yet this one fact is the one we cannot yet explain. We are, each of us, walking around inside the answer, and still we cannot read it. Now, this does not mean scientists have simply thrown up their hands. They study it carefully, from the side, in the ways they can. They look at what changes in the brain when awareness comes and goes, watching what falls quiet as a person slips into a dreamless sleep or under deep anesthesia, and what stirs back to life as they wake. They hunt for the particular patterns of brain activity that seem to travel alongside conscious experience, trying to pin down which goings-on in the tissue are the ones that come with an inner light switched on. And out of all this careful watching, thoughtful people have offered ideas, real attempts to say what consciousness might be. But I want to be careful how I hand these to you, because they are not answers. They are hopeful guesses, honest hypotheses, still argued over, still unproven, and it would be wrong of me to dress them up as more than that. There is at least one honest distinction the science can offer, even here, and it helps to name it. There is a difference between whether you are conscious at all and what you are conscious of. The first is a matter of degree, the plain fact of being awake and aware rather than sunk in a dreamless dark, the light being on or off. The second is the ever-changing content of that awareness, this sound, that thought, this drifting feeling, the particular things that fill the light while it burns. Scientists can study both of these with some success, watching how the brain dims the light in deep sleep and kindles it again on waking, and tracing which patterns seem to carry which passing contents. What none of it yet explains is the deeper thing beneath, why there should be any light to switch on in the first place. We can study the awareness. We cannot yet say why awareness feels like anything at all. One such idea suggests that experience arises when information is broadcast widely across the brain, made available all at once to many regions rather than staying locked in one small quiet corner. On this view, the things you are conscious of are the things that have been shared out across the whole, lit up and announced brain-wide, while everything that stays local stays in the dark. Another idea comes at it differently and proposes that consciousness has to do with how richly information is woven together, how deeply integrated it is, so that a system feels something to the degree that its parts are joined into a unified whole rather than acting as separate pieces. These are thoughtful attempts, and each captures something that feels true, and each has its careful supporters and its careful doubters. But neither has been shown to be the answer, and there are others besides, and the plain fact remains that we do not yet know. You may also have heard bolder and stranger claims that consciousness springs from some deep and exotic corner of physics, and while such ideas can be fun to wonder about, they are far out beyond the evidence, and no one should tell you they are established. They are not. I find something quietly beautiful in landing here, at a real and honest edge, rather than at a tidy false answer. The most remarkable thing in the known universe is the fact of your own inner experience, the simple, astonishing thing that it is like something to be you, lying here in the dark, hearing this voice, feeling the weight of the blanket, drifting towards sleep. And that most remarkable thing is precisely the thing we understand least of all. You are, at this very moment, the deepest unsolved mystery in all of science, and you have been carrying it around, quite casually, your whole life long. There is no need to solve it tonight. There may be no solving it in our time at all. It is enough, I think, simply to marvel that the mystery is here, warm and awake and wondering, inside your own head. Let us gather ourselves back from that great edge and follow the brain along a gentler line, the line of a single life, from its very first beginnings to its last quiet years. Because the brain is not the same through all of life. It grows and shapes itself, and changes its character with the passing decades, and there is something reassuring in seeing the whole long arc of it laid out. It begins before you were even born, with a tremendous burst of making. In the womb, and in the earliest days of life, the brain builds new cells at a rate almost beyond belief, and then sets about wiring them together, throwing out connections in wild profusion, far more than it will ever finally keep. A baby's brain is a riot of new connections, forming at a staggering pace, reaching out and joining up in every direction, laying down far more links than could ever all be used. It is as though the young brain casts an enormous net of possibility, wiring itself for 1,000 futures at once, not yet knowing which one it will grow into. In those first years, the brain is more open to being shaped by the world than it will ever be again, drinking in language and faces and the feel of the world, wiring itself around whatever it meets. The pace of it, in those earliest years, is almost past believing. In the busiest stretch of early life, the young brain is thought to form new connections between its cells at a rate of more than 1 million every second, second after second, day after day. Nothing you will ever build, and no machine ever made, assembles itself so fast. A small child sitting quietly on the floor, seeming to do nothing much at all, is in truth wiring together the most complex object in the universe at a speed that beggars imagination, simply by living and looking and listening and being held and loved. And then, curiously, comes a great pruning. Having made far more connections than it needs, the brain begins, through childhood and on into the teenage years, to trim them back, keeping and strengthening the connections that get used, and quietly clearing away the ones that do not. This is not a loss but a shaping, the way a gardener cuts back a wild and tangled plant, so that it may grow strong and true. The connections you use, in the life you actually live, are kept and deepened. The ones you never use are let go, to leave the whole thing cleaner and swifter and more surely itself. This great trimming carries on for a remarkably long time. The forward region of the brain, the one behind the forehead that handles planning and judgment and holding back from the reckless thing, is among the very last to finish its long shaping, not settling into its full adult form until well into a person's 20s. This is worth a gentle thought for anyone who remembers the storms of their teenage years, or watches a young person through them now. A teenager is not a finished brain making poor choices. A teenager is a brain still deep in its building, its feeling parts running ahead while it's steadying. Judging parts are still quietly coming into their own. It is not a flaw, it is a stage, and everyone who reaches adulthood has passed through it. Then come the long middle years, and here the brain is at its fullest reach, all its regions grown and settled and richly joined, the wild early wiring long since pruned into something swift and sure. This is the brain that carries you through the great work of a life, that holds down a job and raises a family and learns from its mistakes and slowly gathers the thing we call experience, which is really just a vast and well-worn web of pattern, laid down by years of living. It would be easy to imagine this as the brain standing still at last, finished and fixed. But even here it never quite stops changing. Every new face you meet, every new skill you take up, every place you come to know, is still quietly rewiring the tissue, right through the busy heart of your life. And at last come the later years, and here again, the old gloomy story is kinder than it was once told. It is true that with age, the brain tends to work a little more slowly, that names come less readily to the tip of the tongue, that new things take a little longer to learn than they once did. But the wholesale ruin that people once feared is not the ordinary fate of an aging mind. A healthy older brain keeps a great deal of its power, and above all, it keeps that lovely capacity we spoke of, the capacity to change, to learn, to form new connections and new memories right to the end. Older minds hold something the young cannot, the deep and settled understanding that only long years can grow, a whole life's worth of pattern laid down and woven together. And they remain, to the last, able to learn and to be moved and to be changed by a new day. There is no age at which the brain simply closes for business. It grows, it shapes itself, it prunes and settles and matures, and it keeps its quiet openness to the world for as long as you live. From the first wild wiring in the dark of the womb to the last gentle thought of a long life. And so we come back at the very last, from the whispering gaps between the cells and the great edge of the deepest mystery, all the way home, to here and now, and you, resting quietly in the dark with 3 soft pounds of the most wondrous stuff in the universe cradled inside your head. We have wandered a long way tonight, through the little messengers and the folded landscape, through the 2 halves and the built-up world, through memory and feeling, and the brain that reshapes itself, and the brain at work in sleep. And I hope, more than anything, that it has been a calm and easy journey, and that some part of you has already begun to drift softly off along the way. I would like to leave you with one small thought to carry down into sleep. Everything we have spoken of tonight, all of it, is not something happening to someone else, somewhere far away. It is happening in you, right now, as you listen. The 86 billion little cells are whispering to one another in the quiet of your skull at this very moment. The world you seem to simply see is being painted for you, freshly, from the inside. Your day is being sorted and filed and gently laid away for keeping. Your breath is being watched over by the faithful stork at the base, so that you need not spare it a single thought. And somewhere in all that soft electrical weather, impossibly, wonderfully, there is you, an inner light, a someone, awake and aware, and wondering, the deepest riddle in all the world, warm and alive inside your own head. And perhaps the gentlest thing to notice at the end of all this is how little of it you have ever had to manage yourself. You did not arrange for your heart to beat while you slept, or your breath to keep coming, or your memories to be filed away at the close of each day. You did not choose which of the day's moments to keep and which to let go, or set the slow tides of your own mood, or hold the seen world together from one blink to the next. All of it has been done for you, quietly, by the faithful thing behind your eyes, while you simply got on with the business of being alive. It has been looking after you, without your ever asking, since before you drew your very first breath. So there is nothing at all you need to do now, and nowhere you need to be, and nothing left to work out tonight. Your brain has been carrying you faithfully since before you were born, and it will keep its quiet watch through the whole of the night, tending your body, sorting your day, washing itself clean, asking nothing of you but that you finally let go and rest. You do not have to understand it for it to hold you. You never have. Let your breathing slow, and let your thoughts grow soft and loose, and let that small grey universe behind your eyes carry you the rest of the way down into sleep. It knows the way. It has done this every night of your life. Rest now, gently, and sleep well. It will still be quietly working, watching over you, long after you have drifted off, and it will be there, faithful as ever, when you wake.